CD Projekt, the developers of Cyberpunk 2077, have had a class action lawsuit filed against them for their poor launch of the game. Let's talk about that. How's it going, guys? Ryan here with another investing video, and today we're talking about something quite topical that's going on right now, and that is the lawsuit that's been filed against CD Projekt, the developers of Cyberpunk 2077, for their launch of the game, in particular on consoles being PS4 and Xbox One, making them virtually unplayable. But before we get into that, guys, please remember to smash that like button. It helps me out so much, and subscribe for more investing, stock market and trading content on the channel. We talk about all that sort of cool stuff. And leave down below in the comments section your thoughts on the situation with regards to the lawsuit against CD Projekt. So guys, without further ado, let's get into the video. And I'd like to preface this with saying that me personally, I'm a PC gamer. I've actually enjoyed playing Cyberpunk. Apart from all the bugs that are going on, the actual game itself I have enjoyed playing, and I'm fortunate in that I'm not using a console and it actually has been playable. But this situation is really focused towards those people using PS4 and Xbox One, and it does not look like it is good. If anything, it looks like it is an incredibly poor performance, and investors as well as consumers have been lied to about the game. It's effectively not playable at all. Now, what we see here is something that's quite interesting and unprecedented in the gaming industry, and that is the fact that a lawsuit has actually been filed against a company now with regards to them lying about the playability or what is actually being delivered to consumers and investors as a result with the game. What we've seen over, I suppose, the past maybe decade with the introduction of things such as early access and lots of developers just rushing games out in recent times is just sub-grade platforms. Sub-grade games that effectively do not meet the consumers' expectations that have been portrayed by the developers. We always see in so many different games that there is going to be this amazing, world, and it's going to look like this, you can do all these things, and it simply does not happen. Good example of that is The Division. There was a huge downgrade of the quality of that game from what we saw in game trailers and in-game gameplay, as opposed to the product that was actually delivered at the end of the day. And there have been numerous situations where this has occurred, but as a consumer and as investors of those companies, we just have to sit there and accept it. This time it is different. Rosen Law Firm is the law firm that is taking CD Projekt to court for a class action lawsuit. This is due to the fact that the game is virtually unplayable against the consoles of Xbox One and PS4. They were labelled as being playable, and they are quite literally not. If you've seen any footage of Cyberpunk on these consoles, you'll notice it is not good. And particularly when you're an investor of these sort of companies, this is something that is extremely disappointing, because the core role of a business, the core role of CD Projekt, yes, they need to develop great games, but their core role as a business is to develop and provide value to shareholders. And simply they have effectively lied to the consumers, lied to the shareholders that this game is going to be functional on Xbox One and PS4, and released it anyway. And the PR that has gone down with regards to CD Projekt and Cyberpunk 2077 has been absolutely disgusting, purely due to the fact that they've lied to consumers. And I'll just read for you now something that Rosen Law Firm has put out, and it effectively summarizes exactly what the lawsuit is about and the reasons that this is actually going ahead and it's been filed for the shareholders. So as we can see here, there are effectively 4 key reasons that this class action lawsuit has been filed against CD Projekt. So starting from the top, Cyberpunk 2077 was virtually unplayable on the current generation Xbox or PlayStation systems due to an enormous number of bugs. And that is extremely obvious when you actually take a look at the footage. Number 2, as a result, Sony would remove Cyberpunk 2077 from the PlayStation Store, and Sony, Microsoft and CD Projekt would be forced to offer full refunds of the game. This is something we've seen previously with regards to the refunds, but the fact that they've removed it from the PlayStation Store itself is something that we tend to not see, and generally refunds are just offered. If you want to buy the game you can, but it was just that broken that they decided to remove it completely. Number 3, consequently, CD Projekt would suffer reputational and pecuniary harm. That is probably the biggest thing for CD Projekt, but more importantly, CD Projekt investors. They have effectively lost face, and as a result, the value of that company has deteriorated with it, meaning that shareholders are also suffering. Number 4, as a result, defendant's statements about its business, operations, and prospects were materially false and misleading and or lacked a reasonable basis at all relevant times. When the true details entered the market, the lawsuit claims that investors suffered damages, and that is certainly the case when you look at these 4 key points. The key factors that you effectively want to be looking at here is that CD Projekt effectively lied to their shareholders. They lied to their shareholders, they lied to the consumers who were going to buy the game, and the advertisement of how the game itself not necessarily is as a game, but how it would perform and operate on the consoles was not what they stated. In fact, the developers of the game were actually surprised it ran as well as it did on PS4 and Xbox One, and from what we've seen, that is absolutely despicable because it barely runs at all. There's been a lot of people drawing comparisons to games like Roblox because the quality of that is just so bad. Not that Roblox is bad, it just is designed in a way to look that way. This was supposed to be a next generation one of the games to beat. I reckon potentially Game of the Year if they manage to launch this game correctly and put a lot more effort into it. Now, it's also worth noting that there have been multiple pushbacks with the development of Cyberpunk 2077, especially when we saw release dates pushed just before the game was initially released earlier this year. And effectively what that shows is the developers knew that the game was not ready for release, but then they started receiving things such as death threats, and that's effectively forced their hand and forced them to rush out the game because the hype was so large and they didn't want to disappoint their customers and their shareholders any longer. So they've rushed out the game without fine-tuning it, doing the proper quality control that is required for a game which is supposed to be, next generation type stuff. And as a result, what they've unfortunately done is the opposite. They've released a game which is subpar, and it is effectively not something that a lot of people want to play. You don't want to put your hard-earned money into something like this. So the people that you really got to be feeling for at the moment is all those people that have obviously bought the game. They've been offered refunds, which is great, but then you look at the actual team itself of developers who have put blood, sweat and tears into the game, and it's come out like this, and it's just gone down like a lead balloon. Now, fortunately, CD Projekt are still handing out bonuses regardless of the scores that the game is given to the developers for all their hard effort that they've put in. But that still leaves the shareholders, and that's where this lawsuit comes in. The shareholders are going to be the ones who really suffer now because CD Projekt have effectively launched a game which is not up to scratch, and as a result lied to their consumers, which is the point of the class action lawsuit, to hopefully get something back for those shareholders which have lost out. Everyone else in this situation has effectively been compensated, bar the shareholders. What's really interesting is the fact that this sets a new standard potentially depending on the outcome of the class action lawsuit for the gaming industry. What we might see now is if this class action lawsuit goes ahead, it will take time, but it looks like it's going to go ahead, and let's say it's successful, that will mean that game developers really need to be a lot more careful with the way they portray their games to their shareholders, to the consumers and to the general public. And make sure the expectations that they're setting are legitimate and can be followed through. I mean, we've seen this time and time again. I'm an avid investor and I'm an avid gamer. So for me, seeing something like this was extremely disappointing. And as I said, my experience on Cyberpunk 2077 on the computer was not too bad. Yes, it had its bugs, but the release day patches and whatnot helped out quite a bit. But even in saying that, the game's still not perfect. It still crashes to desktop from time to time again, and I'm not 100% happy with the game. I was looking forward to it, and I saw what was portrayed to be an amazing game, but that is not what I've received. I'd say it's a good game, not a great game, in my opinion. I'd love to know your opinion as well, guys. Leave down in the comments your thoughts on Cyberpunk 2077 as a game and the class action lawsuit. Do you reckon it's justified, particularly for those people who are using PS4 or Xbox One? Because as you can see on other platforms, it is working quite well. So is it down to the consumer just using a product which is subpar or not current generation? Or is it down to CD Projekt lying to their consumers, to their shareholders, saying it's going to function on these platforms? I'd tend to probably lean that way, but I'd love to know your thoughts. And if you haven't done already, please remember to subscribe to the channel. We talk about all sorts of investing stuff. It's good fun, guys. And like this video if you enjoyed. And with that, guys, I hope you have an awesome day. I'll see you next time. Cheers.